what we're going to do now is we're going to add some color to these clouds, and there's obviously in Photoshop there's dozens of different ways of doing things. I'm going to show you a technique that I kind of like doing. It still has quite a bit of flexibility, and it's akin to using adjustment layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where my clouds are, and obviously I want to add some color to these because they're a bit, boring with the gray thing. I don't want to have color over the top of my text or my triangle because that is the color that they are. So go back to the beginning there. I'm going to just create an empty layer. There it is there, and let's just trim that down. So there's my empty layer there, and let's call this cloud color, just so we don't lose it as we start getting more and more layers. Let's just make sure it fits into the timeline correctly there. Next thing I'm going to do is just grab my paint bucket tool, and you could fill this in with pretty much any color that you want, and I'm going to show you the reasoning behind that. If you want to keep it really simple, you can just select a color. I'm going to go for like a nice orange color and fill that in, and there we go. It's just a big orange rectangle, and obviously we're not going to see the clouds until we start going to our blend mode. So our blend mode's up here in our layer panel, and part of the update is now we can manually just scrub through, and you can start seeing the effects of some of these blend modes. So you can sort of scrub through and go, okay, is there one that's going to work for me above the others? And you can get some really weird effects, especially when you start hitting stuff like difference and that. The ones that typically I find work really well are multiply. Sometimes color burn, you can get some really cool things, and overlay and soft light, which is sort of like a softer version of these. I think color burns, we're going for something pretty extreme. Color burns kind of working for me. Now it is going to be based on the color that we got here, so you may wish to play around and adjust the color manually by clicking in and filling this in. So that's one way of doing it. We can just change the color in directly. The other way of doing this is adding an adjustment to these. So there's a little FX button down here. I'm going to set this to normal, right? And let's just change it to something really weird like bright green. And I'm going to show you how we can use this without having to decide what color it's going to be straight away. So I'm going to go to FX for adjustments layer, and I'm going to go to color overlay, and let's set this to normal for the blend mode, and just choose the color that you want here. Let's just go with red at the moment and hit OK, and you can see there's our adjustment layers right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the fill over here to 0. So fill is actually the color that we've got at the moment, which is green. And if I drag that down, or you can manually click on it, to 0, it's going to turn that big green rectangle invisible. But that doesn't affect, dare I say, the effects. The effects are completely separate. So the cool thing about doing it this way is we can actually double click on our color here, and we can use our blend modes again. So I can go color burn, and I can also manually go through and adjust it here, and you can sort of see it going in real time. So rather than having to dump my bucket in there each time, I could just jump through all these different colors and see what's going to work for me. And the other cool thing is, I don't have to go and reaching for the paint bucket again. Choose your color, and again, if you want to change different blend modes, you can, but I'm going to stick with color burn in this case. You've also got options of playing around with the opacity. Other cool things in the layer styles is you have things like gradient overlay, and you can see gradient overlay, and we're going to use this for other parts as well. And you can add a gradient to this, and it could be a radial or a lineal, and you can see we've got all these kind of things, and you can change the angles of that, and we can get some really funky looking effects with that. And as I'll show you later on, we can actually animate these. So I'm really liking some of these effects that are popping here, and I've just got a straight black to white gradient here, and we can do things like radial as well. Now this is there is a kind of a glitch thing happening here at the moment, which you may or may not be aware of. I've got the blend mode set to difference, which is probably why it's really funky, but this is why these blend modes are really kind of cool. I did like the difference thing that were happening there. That looks kind of cool. And we've got scalings, but we'll see all that in a moment when we do sort of a glowing effect. One of the things that isn't kind of working for me at the moment, which is just a little sort of glitch sort of thing that's happening, is I should be able to move this gradient around. So if that is the case, just hit OK and then go back to your layer panel here and just double click onto your effects or double click on gradient here. What you should find out is now you can actually go in and we can see we can start moving that gradient around. We can scale it and all that kind of stuff, and we can actually animate that, so we can get some really funky things happening with that. But for now I'm just going to sort of leave that popping in there and just hit OK, and we'll worry about animating that a bit later. So this is just adding a little color over to our clouds. If we scrub through, we can see our clouds are still moving, and already that's it's really adding a lot more dynamic sort of effect to our system.